The Arctic is warming twice as fast as the rest of the world. So Greenland is on the front line when it comes to observing climate change. 13 years ago we travelled here to Disco Bay, home to the tallest icebergs in the world. Now we have returned to find out what's happened to this incredible landscape. The first impression is still one of wonder. This UNESCO World Heritage Site is home to the Jakobshavn Glacier. As it melts, it releases more fresh water into the sea, more than any other glacier in the Northern Hemisphere. The first thing we noticed was how the town of Ilulissat, Greenlandic for many icebergs, has experienced a tourist boom. The attraction is clear, but the underlying reason was unnerving. Back in 2006, it was already clear that dramatic change had happened within people's lifetimes. Back then, most of the icebergs were pristine, but in 2019, a startling change as the glacier retreated further inland. Iceberg after iceberg was now covered in dirt. All around Disco Bay, we saw icebergs studded in grit, stones and sand. We know that Jakobshavn is already contributing to the rise in global sea levels. We know that climate change is triggering more frequent storm surges. Increased flooding is inevitable. What begins here, in an isolated Arctic wilderness, a place that seems like a world away, is closer to home than we think.
Crisis continues to worsen. Reports suggest that Greenland's ice sheet have shrunk past the point of rectifying. It is being said that the ice is likely to melt away no matter how quickly the world reduces climate warming emissions. Scientists have studied more than 200 glaciers across the Arctic territory and found that annual snowfall was no longer enough to replenish glaciers of the snow. Melting is already causing global seas to rise about a millimeter on average per year. If all of Greenland's ice melts, the water released would push sea levels up by an average of 6 meters. Now this is enough to drown many coastal cities around the world. The Arctic has been warming at least twice as fast as the rest of the world for at least the last 30 years. This year, the polar sea ice hit its lowest extent for July in the past 40 years. The new study also unravels that the territory's ice sheet will now gain mass only once every 100 years, a grim indicator of how difficult it is to regrow glaciers once they lose ice uncontrollably.
So the situation is quite bad. But to say that we're going to lose the ice sheet, I mean, that is quite exaggerated at this point. It's clear that there's too much ice being lost, and so there's no equilibrium. But of course, what we're going to do today and the actions that we're going to take will have a big influence on the future evolution. And also the rate at which these icebergs are being discharged and the rate at which these glaciers are falling into the ocean may still stabilize. So to say that we're going to lose the ice sheet, which would also result in 6 meters of sea level rise, is exaggerated. But what we see is that there is a certain delay, and that even if we would be able to stop the temperatures at the present day levels, even if we would be able to do so, even then we would keep on losing mass for a bit. But then you could get a new point, a new stabilization. Indeed, sea levels will rise. If the whole ice sheet would disappear, which would take hundreds to thousands of years, we could get 6 meters of sea level rise. But also ocean currents could change. And if your ocean currents change, your climatic conditions will change. And for instance, the Gulf Stream, which brings a lot of warmth to Europe, may also be altered if you have a huge loss of the Greenland's ice sheet.
We know our weather system is chaotic rather than linear, and glacial retreat isn't straightforward either. Sometimes Jakobshavn retreats rapidly by as much as 17 kilometers in a single year. Sometimes it stalls for a decade or more, but the trajectory over the century and a half is clear. In the past 3 years, Jakobshavn has not just stalled but even gained some mass. However, scientists can't explain this, and it's not good news.